Welcome to another episode of the MMA Lock-Cast. I'm your host, Manpreet, aka MMA Lock of the Night, and your boy on Twitter at MMA LOTN. This week we're going over USC on ESPN 8, which is headlined by Walt versus Alistair Overeem. This is the third UFC event in 8 days. It's been a crazy stretch. It's been mad fun. You know, I mean, I've had a lot of. It's been very fun for me to tape study all 30 whatever of these fights in such a short amount of period of time. I'm hoping that next time we're in a situation like this, I can just get a little bit more of a head start. But a lot of these fights are just literally being announced a week or two beforehand. And then again, you got 29, 30 other fights that you got to look into as well. But it's been great. What hasn't been great though is the last two events in terms of betting. So we're 0-6. That's not good. The last one, we had the lock of the night play 5 units on Hunter Azure at -185. The thing that sucks the most is always when you see stuff on tape, but then it doesn't translate into the fight that you bet on. That's probably the worst. You know, you're expecting Hunter Azure to go out there and actually use his wrestling a little bit more, grind out Brian Kelleher, stay away from the guillotine choke, and then for some reason, you know, we see the majority of the fight play out on the feet. Brian Kelleher lands one of his patented bombs and puts Hunter Azure out, and that fucking hurt because, yeah, that's 2 straight lock of the night losses in a row. Other dog of the night plays, I had 1.1 unit at +125 on Gabriel Benitez versus Omar Morales. That whiffs. They stood and banged for 15 minutes. I was hoping that one of them would fall over. Did not happen. Talk about that nasty cut on Gabriel Benitez's shin as well. That was kind of disgusting. And then lastly, I had 0.5 units at +300 on Sarah Moras over Sijara Eubanks. That one whiffs. I would take that bet over and over again. Based on what I saw on tape, I would always take that bet just based on the questionable gas tank of Sijara Eubanks, which she seems to have slightly addressed. So, moving forward, that's something that we're going to have to correct in terms of our analysis and assessment of Sijara Eubanks. But she looked good. You know, I'll give it to her. She looked good. So overall, -6.6 units. Unfortunate event there, but we are back in the thick of things for this May 16th card. Yeah, this May 16th card, headlined by Walt Harrison, Alistair Overeem. I'm going to go a little bit heavier here in terms of volume. If you guys saw my tweet out there in regards to the best bets article that I put out on my Patreon for every event, literally everything hit except the ones that I had a bet on, other than the Ray Borg fight as well too. So I picked Borg, and that Ricky Simon obviously comes out on the winning end. But everything else, like pretty much everything else, was plus money, and it hit. You know, the under 2.5 in the Thiago Moises versus Michael Johnson fight. Bummed I didn't hit that. That was up to like +180, which was crazy. Glover Teixeira, another one that I had. I wish I had the balls to go out there and bet, but I passed on that too. He goes out there and puts an absolute whooping on Anthony Smith. So this time around, I'm not gonna pass up on some of these ones that I'm quite confident in. The last two events, I was kind of just saying, okay, I got my lock of the night play, and then I got a dog of the night play, and then I got like a little bit of a crazier play, like Nico Price for UFC 249, 0.75 units at +255. That had some good value considering the effort that we got out of him, and then 0.5 units at +300 on Serum Rust. Like there's always that seems to be the formula that I tried going with over the last couple of events, but this time around I want to see, when I act upon more plays that I feel strongly about, how it goes for us. So let's see. I believe I'm going to have at least 5 plays for this card, and hopefully you guys can pick out what they are with the breakdowns that we got coming up. But also they're going to be posted since they're free. I lost my last event, so the next 3 at least will be free. So make sure you guys check out my Twitter account or the website, because I post them there as well too. All right. As you guys know, this is the third card now where I've been pre-recording my breakdowns for each fight. I posted immediately on Patreon for my Patreon subscribers just to give them a little bit of love and try to get the content out to them ASAP. So if you do want to get those breakdowns ASAP, like a couple of them I recorded a couple of days ago and my Patreon members got them right away, go to the Patreon. It's $5 a month. That's nothing. I put out a breakdown for every single card nice and early. Obviously, you guys get it for free on the MMA Lock-Cast, but some of the lines and things may have moved in that amount of time, so you might want to get a little bit earlier. You get a best bets article, which tells you, at least in my opinion, what the best value and bet is, either straight or total wise for every single fight on the card. You get all the bets, even when I'm charging the public and then you get a Hail Mary Patreon parlay, and then lastly, you get a final thoughts video the day before a UFC event. But since, the last two podcasts pretty much came out the day before the video, there hasn't been too much changes in terms of line movements or anything like that. So I haven't been doing the final thoughts videos for that. But the final thoughts video will be back, obviously, for the May 30th card, since we're going to have so much time between when I have actually recorded the breakdowns to when the fight's actually going to happen. So ton of content on Patreon for you guys to check out. $5 a month. It's nothing. So if you want to trust your boy a little bit more, let's head on over there and check that out. Again, it's all in the description below. All right, let's get into the breakdowns. Great card overall. A ton of interesting matchups. I went into a lot of these matchups thinking I'm going to go one way. I come out the other. I'm wanting to bet the other way too. You guys will just have to figure that out as we get through these breakdowns. So let's get to the breakdowns. Don'Tale Mayes versus Rodrigo Nascimento. This fight's very interesting because the line is obviously a little bit close. -125 for Mayes, +105 for Nascimento. Starting off with Nascimento, there isn't too much tape on him. There's only 2 fights that I've been able to see of his. He seems like a big guy, 6'3", 80-inch reach. He's going to have a slight height advantage on Don'Tale Mayes here, but he's a thick boy. Let's put it that way. Both of the fights that I saw, he was able to get the fights down pretty easily. Maybe the Contender Series slightly more difficult than his other fight that we have footage of. But once he gets the fight to the ground, he seems very offensive in terms of looking for submissions and trying to get the finish. He was able to get the finish with relative ease in that fight against Martinek on the Contender Series. Beautiful arm triangle choke there. But it seems like, we don't know what his gas tank looks like. We don't know what it's going to look like, come the second round. We don't know how good his striking is, or even if it's passable enough to be able to handle Don'Tale Mayes on the feet until he's able to get this fight to the ground. Don'Tale Mayes, on the other hand, there's a lot more footage available for him. Obviously a striker and wants to get the knockout as quickly as possible. Very tough fight in the UFC first time around with Cyril Gane, who's, on his way to the top 5. But with Don'Tale Mayes, there are some improvements that still need to be made. He lost to Alan Crowder via ground and pound in his first stint on the Contender Series. And then the next season, he was able to come back, beat Mitchell Sipe, and then also Ricardo Purcell. Both fights that, we saw Don'Tale Mayes' takedown defense tested. Not that bad. I'm kind of impressed. I'll give him that. He was also able to fend off Mohammed Usman, who is Kamaru Usman's brother. He did get taken down in that fight, but he did also show really good takedown defense in that fight as well, too. So that's something to keep in mind. Based off the tape that we have, you got to think that Mayes has the advantage on the feet. If he's able to keep the fight on the feet, he should be able to, pretty much go to work. More often than not, in these situations, I like to side with the grappler, but there's just not enough tape on Nascimento for me to be completely confident in even betting him here. Maybe the under is something that we could look at, but that's currently not available. The fight doesn't go to decision is currently -300, so that's something to also keep in mind. Possible parlay piece for some of you guys out there that like to make those crazy parlays. But I like Mayes here strictly due to the fact, again, we don't have much tape on Nascimento. And more often than not, I side with the grappler. So it seems like he has a really good offensive, guard here. Not guard, but offensive top game, which is good, especially against a guy like Don'Tale Mayes. But we've also seen improvements in Mayes' game where he's able to continuously move and get back to his feet. There's too many question marks against Nascimento to back him here confidently. So I'm going to side with Don'Tale Mayes here. I think he knocks him out in probably the second round. It's going to be even quicker if he's able to stuff the takedowns that are imminent from Nascimento. So I'll go with Don'Tale Mayes. Highly doubt I'll play this fight again. Well, when you have such restricted tape on a certain individual, you wanna be very cautious in terms of staking money on them. So I'm going with Don'Tale Mayes here, but this fight will be more than likely a pass. Yes, I have a co-host for this portion of or at least for this breakdown itself. But we're going to be going over Nate Landwehr. I keep messing his name up. Nate Landwehr versus Darren Elkins. This fight should be chaos. In my opinion, it has the high likelihood of being the fight of the night here. Both guys are a little bit erratic and crazy in their styles and their approaches. Obviously, Nate Landwehr, the madman that he is, whenever he fights, he always brings the fire. For when I used to be a little bit more trigger happy with like my fight doesn't go to decision props and my under 2.5 props, I always talk about certain guys having the ingredients to actually, ensure that this fight will not go to a decision. And Nate Landwehr is one of those guys. He's the Nico Price. I think that if we, we can kind of rely on him to be the guy that either goes out there and gets the finish or goes out on his shield. And I really like him in this spot in terms of being able to nullify the grappling of Darren Elkins. So it's obvious that, if you watch some of Nate's fights, it's not too hard to get this guy down. But he does a really good job in terms of getting back to his feet and then kind of just raining down chaos on his opponent. He's always in your face. Like, there's certain fights where you'll see, like, if there's an exchange where they're forced to be super far apart, Nate's the one running right back to get back into his opponent's face. And I think that with his style and Darren Elkins' ability to just continuously always get hit, it's going to create chaotic situations, and either guy can capitalize on it. Darren Elkins hits pretty fucking hard, even when he's the one getting beat on for like 2 rounds or something. He can still hit hard, generate a lot of power, and we just saw Nate Landwehr get absolutely deaded by a beautiful knee, albeit by Herbert Burns last time around. But I feel like Darren Elkins, with the right punch, based on the circumstances, the chaos that's ensuing, I feel like he can find Nate's chin as well to drop him and possibly follow up with a submission or something, but or the TKO, of course. Nate Landwehr's side, I could absolutely see him landing one of those crazy, uppercuts to the heavens that he likes to fucking throw. He could definitely catch Darren here. He's going to have this slight speed advantage as well, so that only helps his ability to land on Darren Elkins, who's a little bit more slower and prodding. Not the slowest guy out there, but he's still Nate will have an advantage. We can definitely see that. The worry here in terms of the under not hitting is if Darren Elkins actually gets this fight down consistently and is actually able to control Nate there. Everything that I've seen from Nate has kind of shown me that he's good at staying out of submissions. He's able to, preserve his time on the ground to eventually work back to his feet, and then again, just push the pace and get back into his opponent's face. And Darren Elkins, good cardio, but his striking defense really plummets when he is further on into a fight, and it's been all signs point to this fight being a high-paced fight, and one of these guys, they're really going to start sucking wind, and the other person's eventually going to take over. I think that it's going to be Nate that eventually finds the knockout punch and is able to put Darren Elkins away. I know that's been a little bit hard for a lot of people who have gotten so fucking close, but like, there were so many opportunities where Volkanovski was going to be able to finish Elkins as well too. One time he got saved by the bell, and actually twice he got saved by the bell in that Volkanovski fight. But it's just a matter of time, and I think Nate's erratic fighting style and just throwing pretty much everything into every punch, it definitely benefits him here, and I think that he'll be able to take advantage of Darren Elkins. I fully expect Darren Elkins to get Nate Landwehr down, but I expect Landwehr to eventually work his way back up and continue to provide chaos. And Darren Elkins has a little bit of that ingredient in terms of ensuring that a fight doesn't go to a decision. Again, unfortunately his chin. 2, he does pack a little bit of power, and he doesn't mind getting in firefights. He's not the again, I expect him to get Nate down, but he's not an Olympic style wrestler or anything like that. He'll get you down, but he's probably not the best at keeping you down. He's slow in certain ways with his fighting style, and that's just something that Nate is going to be able to exploit, in my opinion. And everything you've seen in Nate's last fights, like outside of the Herbert Burns fight, well, actually, even including the Herbert Burns fight to a certain extent, when he gets taken down or when he gets put in bad positions, he's still able to gut it out, get through, get back up, and then provide chaos. And that chaos is kind of what I'm banking on here to actually hit the under 2.5. So I'm going to be playing the under 2.5. I believe we got plus 160 at Sportbet, plus 155 at Pinnacle. I love it. It would be great to compare this to the last event that we just had on Wednesday, Michael Johnson and Thiago Moises. That was plus 180-ish, I believe, for the fight to go under 2.5 rounds. And these guys have that same thing. I've been kicking myself for passing on that under. Passes are worse than a loss, in my opinion, just as my man Rockstar Z says as well, too. But I like Nate to win here. I'm going to say probably second round, maybe even first round. He could catch Darren early, too. But rather than taking the plus 110-ish that you would get on Nate, I would rather go with the under 2.5 to cover it, in case Elkins somehow gets the finish. So plus 160 for 12.5 minutes of a Nate Landwehr fight against Darren Elkins, I'm fucking in. But for this purpose of the podcast, I'm going to pick Nate to win. But yeah, the main thing here is going to be the under 2.5 plus 160. Just take that shit home, baby. Mara Romero Borella versus Cortney Casey. This fight is currently lined at minus 140 for Cortney Casey, plus 130 for Mara Romero Borella. Let's start off with Cortney Casey on this side. So it's pretty much well known that whenever you're going into a Cortney Casey fight, more often than not, it's going to be a very close fight. And, it doesn't seem like she does much in her fights, or at least fight to kind of change that. She always has the same approach pretty much coming into every single fight. 3 out of her last 4 fights all went to a split decision. 2 of those she ended up losing. Those ones were to Felice Herrig and Michelle Watterson. She ended up getting a split over Angela Hill in a fight that she arguably lost, at least in my opinion. And then in the Cynthia Calvillo fight, she was just a little bit more outpaced, but it's still very close. Unanimous decision all around, but still a close fight. Currently landing at minus 140. It's tough to justify a reason as to why you should be backing her, or why you could pick her to win. I'm completely understanding of that, but in terms of putting money on her, it's a little bit ridiculous to think, especially when a fight that could be closely contested. She isn't a crazy knockout power puncher type of fighter. She does have volume. She roughly throws just over 4 strikes per minute. She lands just as much as well too. But the one thing that I find with her, like, mechanically, she's a better striker than Borella, but in terms of striking defense, when she's throwing, though, she doesn't give a fuck about what's coming back at her, and that could be a detriment to her, eventually. She hasn't really gotten stopped in the UFC by punches before, so she definitely has durability on her side, but, a better puncher than Mara will probably be able to catch her and really give her some trouble. She has no issues with counter-striking when she's moving on her back foot, which is decent for her in terms of continuing to up her output. And it's a little bit demoralizing for our opponents too when they keep crashing forward, but they're eating shots on the way back. Casey does a decent job of seeing the shots as they're coming and not really getting. She does a decent job of getting out of the way of them, but she also has a good job of she does a good job of scoping out the effectiveness of her counter strikes. She's a decent counter striker as well too. I'll give her that. Decent jiu-jitsu. We saw Felice Herrig take her down and then eventually get that sweep and get back on top and eventually get the fight back to the feet. But she's not the most active from there either. People sometimes forget about Romero Borella's third last fight against Taylor Santos, against a highly acclaimed fighter or prospect, 15-0 coming into the UFC, and she pretty much grinded her out for those first 2 rounds. In that third round, though, she really got lit up, and it's hard for me to see Cortney Casey really light her up in that aspect too, but I think that she'll do a decent job of landing some shots. Casey just has this bad habit of continuously backing straight up. Every now and then you'll see her laterally move, which isn't too bad. But in terms of moving straight back, that kind of plays into Romero's game a little bit. Romero is successful when she's able to bully girls against the cage, push her weight up against them, and possibly get this fight to the ground. She has a rear naked choke win over Kalindra Faria a couple fights ago and Romero, but it's hard for me to justify a side either way. Going into this, I wanted to see if I'd be comfortable enough betting the plus 130 on Mara. coming out on the other side now, I'm probably just going to pass this play in general. Betting wise, it's probably a dog or pass situation again, considering the fact that Casey normally has very close fights. Casey does actually have a better output rate. She almost doubles her in terms of output. So if this fight stays on the feet, we could see her output her in that way. But again, it's just the aesthetic of constantly seeing her get moved backwards may play into the judges as well. Even if she's the one that's landing more with Borella crashing forward, I could see plenty of instances over this 15-minute stretch where Borella is moving forward, but Casey, she is moving backwards but throwing and landing too. But the thing is, she doesn't really have the most pop or crazy damage off of her shots either. She always looks like she's the one that came out of a fight in her fights compared to her opponents, which is kind of crazy. But Romero, obviously coming off of 2 tough losses against Lauren Murphy where she got stopped. It seemed like she didn't really know what to do in that Murphy fight after she wasn't able to get her down after a couple of takedown attempts. And then obviously in the De La Rosa fight, she was completely outmatched in terms of the grappling aspect. Decent job on the feet against Montana, but the Montana, I believe it was in the end of the 3rd round where she was actually able to land a shot on Mara that dropped Mara, and then she just read out the round in top position. It's tough for me to pick a side here. I'm going to pick Casey to win this fight. If you're going to bet it, probably the Romero side is the better bet. But in terms of like a lock on this play, it's probably the over 2.5. It's tough for me to see either woman go out there and get a finish here. Casey's not a finisher. Borella's not the biggest finisher either. This could be just a fight just pretty much contested on the feet with both girls going back and forth. I'll give the slight edge to Casey in terms of her output numbers. So I think that she could win from output, but she could also lose the fight from, the lack of power in her output and the consistent forward movement of Borella in terms of making it look good in the judges' eyes. So I'm going to go with Cortney Casey here. Again, this is a toss-up fight. And if you're, capping it and it's a toss-up fight, but you see the plus 130 on Borella, you're probably tempted to take that. And I wouldn't completely blame you, but this fight is too fucking close. Like you really got to have some balls to play, to pick a side and make a bet on this fight. So I'm passing it personally, but I'm going to pick Cortney Casey to win by decision. Giga Chikadze versus late replacement Irwin Rivera. I guess I got to break down Giga Chikadze for the second time this week for you guys, at least for the people on my Patreon. Obviously, people listening to the MMA Lock-Cast, the full episode, this is the first time you guys are going to hear me talking about Giga Chikadze for this card, but I've already talked about him before, so let me just get him out of the way first. 9-2 featherweight, big win over Jamal Emmers last time around, currently on a 4-fight winning streak. We obviously know about his glory kickboxing background. He's training over at King's MMA with Rafael Cordero. 6 foot 74-inch, 6 foot tall, 74-inch reach, pretty tall for the featherweight division. Uses his range very well, has some nasty kicks. He likes keeping opponents on the outside. His grappling is a work in progress. Obviously, his main forte is is kickboxing. But in the Jamal Emmers fight, I think he kind of got lucky in the fact that Jamal Emmers didn't try to initiate the grappling in that first round. If he was able to do that, that was probably a fight that he would be able to win. However, he decided to keep it on the feet, and Giga did a lot of good things in that first round. In the second round, however, Jamal Emmers does get Giga Chikadze down, not without a little bit of a fight. However, we see something really interesting and informative about Giga. He did a good job in terms of initiating a reverse, a sweep. He's able to get on top. He eventually finds his way back to his feet, but that just shows that he's working on his game, especially pulling that off against a top-heavy guy in Jamal Emmers. That's very impressive. I don't think that's really going to be Irwin's game here. At least watching his last 3 fights, you don't really see him. I think I only saw him shoot for 1 takedown. He kind of relies on his pressure. His last 2 wins are by liver shot KO, which are beautifully set up. They were in the 4th round as well too, so both of his opponents were really sucking wind by that point. His last fight against I forgot how to pronounce the guy's name, Danny Sabatello. pretty much that first 2.5 rounds, he was literally just shooting takedowns, trying to get Irwin down, was successful most of those times, and was able to ride out on top. As the fight started to progress, even when Irwin was getting taken down, he did a really good job in terms of exploding, getting back to his feet, and then putting it on Danny, because that's pretty much where his forte is, on the feet. Irwin, former Titan FC champion. He's coming into the UFC, which means that he's relinquishing his belt at 135 pounds down there at Titan FC. But he's given up a little bit of size here. Obviously, he'll probably go back to 135 after this fight, win, lose, or draw. But he's coming, undersized, 5'6", 68-inch reach. Giga Chikadze, 6 foot, with a 74-inch reach. So he's gonna, that's kind of Giga's wheelhouse, is playing on the outside, using kicks, using his long jab. And I think that's going to be evident here too. Irwin's going to have to crash forward, try to crowd Giga. He has a decent double leg, but it's, he didn't seem to have the craziest top control either. And with Giga's ever improving ability, I believe he, even if it does get taken down, he should have a not too hard of a chance in terms of getting back to his feet. It's all about Irwin crashing forward and, crowding Giga, pushing him up against the cage and hopefully trying to get the takedown. It would be hard for me to see him actually, outstrike Giga here. That is, Irwin's strength, but Giga obviously has the better, he has more experience with it. He's been striking for a longer time. He's more refined in his striking. When it comes to MMA striking is where things will get interesting. If Irwin's able to get Giga to, react to takedown attempts, get him thinking more than just about the takedowns, mix some hands in there, throw some shots, maybe focus on the body more. He's been working that liver shot. He even released on his Instagram a little quick a liver shot KO 101 training or something like that for people. He goes out there and gets 2 straight liver shot KOs. He thinks he's the master of that. So maybe he can implement that here against Giga, because obviously it's going to be easier to, target the body rather than the head, obviously because he has so much more distance to make up there. But it's going to be pertinent for Giga to initiate his kicks, make sure he gets them back quickly as well too, so that he doesn't give up any type of takedown, because that's kind of Irwin's path to victory here. I can see him just, waiting on the outside, waiting to explode, and then, if this fight goes to a full 15 minutes, the judges will more than likely see Giga's consistent work from the outside compared to seeing Irwin, hanging around on the outside and then just waiting to crash forward and land some big shots. Based on his Instagram, it seems like he's been training, so it's not like he's just getting up off the couch and coming in and trying to take this fight on short notice. So it's good that he's been training. It's intriguing that he hasn't been training for the specific style of Giga. He did fight a pretty tall fighter last time around too, I believe. Danny was 5'9", so Giga has a couple inches on him as well. So it is a big height discrepancy. It's unfortunate that we didn't get to see a face-off this morning during their weigh-ins. Obviously, Irwin's still getting his COVID test results back, so that's something, that kept him from the face-offs. I hope, once I finish recording this, that he didn't test positive and he's actually going to be able to fight tomorrow. But I like Giga here. I'm assuming he's going to be a heavy favorite. The line hasn't dropped. A buddy of mine told me that Irwin is roughly going to be around plus 260. If that's the case, I'm going to pass on Giga. Even as a parlay piece, I would steer clear from this. Even though Giga's been training for a specific fight camp this entire time, he hasn't been training for a guy like Irwin Rivera. Mike Davis brought a whole different tool set to this matchup compared to what Irwin's going to bring. So both guys are kind of going to be, trying to figure out last minute how to deal with a guy like Irwin Rivera or how to deal with a guy like Giga Chikadze. I'm sure they would benefit highly as well from the tape index for instances like this, because we updated the tape index earlier this morning to reflect Irwin jumping in on this fight in short notice. But I'm sure they're watching some tape. Giga's coaches are probably at the hotel right now looking up some Irwin tape and seeing what he brings to the table. I don't feel like Giga's the type of guy that would have been like, all right, let me watch tape on this guy first before I accept this fight. I think he just like, fuck it, I'm already here, I'm about to make weight, let's just accept this fight, take this guy for who he is, and having getting a win over a Titan FC champion, even though if it's a weight class below, at least it does something for Giga's confidence if he's actually able to go out there and get the victory here. So it's a pass for me, no matter what the line gets to for Irwin. I wanted to see a little bit more from him in terms of his grappling. He did good in terms of getting out of grappling positions. For me, it's more so, is he going to be able to continuously close the distance without eating too big of shots from Giga, and then consistently get him down, hold him down, and what we've seen from Giga in the past already, he is working on his get-ups. He is working on his takedown defense. But, I'm not going to say I'll be completely surprised if we see Irwin go out there and actually get a takedown. I would be surprised if we see him consistently keep him down for 15 minutes. So I'm going to take Giga here to win by decision. But overall, as a parlay piece, as a Hail Mary shot, I'm going to stay away from this fight completely. But I'm going to take Giga Chikadze to win by decision. Anthony Hernandez versus Kevin Holland. This is probably top 2 fights for me on this card in terms of fights that are going to deliver and be bangers. In terms of the odds, it's pretty well set that it's going to be a dead even fight. Right now, it's minus 106 on 5 dimes for Anthony Hernandez, minus 104 on Kevin Holland the other way. I think the line is pretty much where it should be. But the part that the line that I'm most interested in is the under 2.5 plus 165 currently on Pinnacle, plus 170 on Sportbet. I might take the shot on either side. But let's start off with Anthony Hernandez. So this is a fighter that I'm very high on. Since his debut, he lost in his debut to Marcus Perez back in February of 2019, but he was actually coming off a pretty extended layoff, not extended, roughly about an 8-month layoff. He got suspended for 6 months due to marijuana after he had beaten Jordan Wright within 40 seconds on the Contender Series. If y'all remember the Beverly Hills Ninja, Jordan Wright, the Can Crusher, as they used to call him. But anyway, Anthony Hernandez, before that fight on the Contender Series, he went out there and beat UFC fighter right now, Brendan Allen, who in his own right is becoming a very, solid UFC fighter himself. But that fight, man, 5 rounds, absolute war, back and forth, grappling exchanges, striking exchanges, very, very fun fight. If you guys have not checked that out and just have a free 25 minutes on your hands, I would highly suggest going to check that fight out. Very, very fun. And obviously we have it on the tape index, so you guys can quickly find it that way too. But Anthony Hernandez, man, he looks like Cain Velasquez. I posted something earlier today regarding how they look like relatives, but their fighting style is kind of the same too. It's forward at all times. Anthony Hernandez has some pretty good hands himself too. His grappling is when you see fighters that mainly go for grappling, you kind of think that they're trying to go for a decision one on points. Now with Anthony Hernandez, this guy likes to come forward and seeks to finish at all times. It's submission over position for him compared to position over submission for a lot of fighters when they like to implement their grappling. He is always going for a finish. He is always going for it. He's always putting himself in harm's way to try and get that finish. It was very evident in the Marcus Perez fight. It was even more evident in the Jun Young Park fight, which was his last one back in August of 2019. Very, very fun fight there as well too. I cashed the fight doesn't go to decision on that one. I believe it was at minus 170, which I thought was a little bit ridiculous. But in this Kevin Holland fight, plus 170 for this fight for under 2.5. Count me the fuck in. Anthony Hernandez is a finisher or a get finished guy. He's only been finished once, he's only lost and been finished once in his career. But this Kevin Holland fight, it's going to be intriguing too. Let's talk about the Kevin Holland side. Or actually, you know what? Last thing I wanted to say about the Anthony Hernandez side of things, what's worse than getting kicked in the liver and having to recover from that? Getting kicked in the liver, then having to immediately defend a rear naked choke, and then a Darce choke right after that. Obviously, you're going to tap. Obviously, you're going to succumb to that. But very big win for Marcus Perez in that fight. But definitely a learning lesson for Anthony Hernandez. He was hurt pretty bad off that liver shot, and he was still trying to defend himself. Kudos for being able to defend the rear naked choke in that situation. But the Darce choke was a little bit too much. And then or sorry, it was an anaconda choke. The only difference is obviously which side that they have the actual grip on. From what I've learned, if the grip is on the armpit side, that's an anaconda choke. A, armpit, A, anaconda. And then if it's on the other side, it's a darts choke. So there's your jiu-jitsu 101 real quick right there. But in terms of, it's hilarious that he got anaconda choked in his loss. And then the next fight back, he gets an anaconda choke win over Park. And this Kevin Holland fight, man, I find with Kevin Holland, the finishes come when he's fighting somebody that's seeking the finish themselves. So Gerald Meerschaert, in fights, certain fights, sometimes he's looking for the finish, and obviously there were a ton of submission attempts in that fight. I actually want to get the actual statistic in terms of submission attempts on either side for that fight, but Gerald Meerschaert, there are certain times where he's looking to just hold and he's looking to just, win and get the position. With Anthony Hernandez, you're going to be seeing him trying to, again, go for the submission over position. He's going to be looking to tie up Kevin Holland, get him to the ground, work to the back, consistently punching, consistently looking for chokes or submissions of any sort. What's that? 4 submission attempts for Gerald Meerschaert, 2 for Kevin Holland in that fight, 6 total. I feel like there were way more than that considering how that fight went. But with Kevin Holland, the finishing side of him or get finished side of him comes out when his opponent is the one seeking the finish as well too. The Thiago Santos fight was a little bit of a weird one. It was his debut in the UFC. But, the John Phillips fight, Phillips has always come in to look for the finish. Kevin Holland was able to find the finish there. Alistair de Chirico, Kiriko, I keep fucking up his name. But either way, that was a fight where Kiriko is looking to grapple up and hold, Kevin Holland a little bit more than he was actually looking to get the finish. He landed a beautiful elbow in that fight, but Kevin Holland has a pretty good chin, and he was able to sustain that and still come out with a unanimous decision victory at the end of that. But in the Brendan Allen fight, Allen from the get-go was, let's get this fight to the ground, let's work for submissions, let's try to get that finish, and it did end up coming to fruition for him in that second round when Brendan Allen was actually able to get this rear naked choke. I expect the same thing from Anthony Hernandez here. Like, it's funny that they have that as a common opponent, and Brendan Allen is kind of a similar fighter to Anthony Hernandez, but I feel like Anthony Hernandez is a little bit more willing to engage on the feet. He doesn't just try to close a distance and then just grab a hold of you and try to drag you to the ground. He's closing distance with punches, with significant strikes, trying to land some damage and get on the inside, and then I believe he's always trying to look for the back. He's always looking for the back. Again, submission over position or damage over position, that is Anthony Hernandez's game. And sometimes it might be to his detriment. He only has 1 loss on his record so far. So I think once the losses start to pile up a little bit and Hernandez sees that's probably not the best way to go about fighting a fight, I'm always going to be betting the under 2.5 in his fights. And obviously it depends on the opponent as well too. Like if he has D. Carrico across the cage from him, I probably wouldn't be as keen on betting the under in his fights. But you got Kevin Holland here, who himself is a madman. So I love the style and the way that both of these fighters clash. Like I already have a bet on the under 2.5 on the Nate Landwehr and Darren Elkins fight, and I'd say 80% of the reason is due to Nate and then 20% due to Elkins. I feel like this is a little bit more evened out, maybe 65-70% Anthony Hernandez side in terms of why I'm betting the under 2.5 here. But Kevin Holland is the perfect opponent to allow for crazy scrambles. I could definitely see a ton of different scrambles, a lot of reversals, but I am, for plus 170, plus 165, I am more than happy to lay down at least 1 unit to see if this fight actually goes to under 2.5. When you continuously see fighters put themselves into situations where they could potentially get finished, and you're giving me plus money and 12.5 minutes, I'm fucking in. I'm definitely in. So plus 165, plus 170. It might be between a 1 to 1.2 unit bet, but I'm definitely going to be betting that. I'm kicking myself for missing the Moises and Johnson opportunity from Wednesday, but I definitely like Anthony Hernandez to possibly get I'll call it a darts choke, either a darts or a rear naked choke finish, maybe even a TKO from on top, but Holland's chin is quite durable. So I'm going to go with Anthony Hernandez by second round submission, but this fight is going to be great. This is going to be a very fun fight, and I can't wait for it. It's the one that I'm most excited for, and I fully expect it to go under 2.5 rounds, but the official pick for the podcast is going to be Anthony Hernandez via second round submission. Miguel Baeza versus Matt Brown. Line currently sitting around minus 200 for Miguel Baeza, plus 170 on Matt Brown. Let's start off quickly with Miguel Baeza, 8-0, a Contender Series product who looked very good on that show. And then obviously in that his debut fight against Hector O'Donnell, he looked really good, showing crisp punching and great leg kicks, which eventually led to him, dropping Hector O'Donnell with those calf kicks and then following up with some ground and pound. He looks very calculated in his approach. He doesn't take super or too many crazy risks. He's nice and long for the division as well too. Likes to keep his range. Really only unloads when he's certain that he has his opponent hurt. That's very important here against a guy like Matt Brown, especially with the fact that Miguel Baeza has great kicks as well too. That could definitely come into play here with, Matt Brown pretty much getting hurt in every single fight to the body. It's insane. Sometimes he's able to come back, but in other times he's just not able. He just crumples in the spot. Matt Brown, he did come back from his retirement with a victory over Ben Saunders. I believe that was back in December. Just want to confirm that timeline. Yeah. UFC 245, he made his return and he beat Matt Brown in the second round with a ground and pound. Very, very impressive there. But, most of his opponents as of late are guys that are pretty much past their prime. Let's take, he fought Jake Ellenberger back in 2016, lost via body kick and punches. After that, lost to Donald Cerrone via head kick at UFC 206 in 2016. And then before he called it quits in November of 2017, he went out there and finished Diego Sanchez, who himself also hurt Matt Brown to the feet, but just for some goddamn reason had no killer instinct at that point in terms of running in and trying to finish Matt Brown, because he easily probably could have followed up and finished him. Maybe he was just a little bit worried in terms of what Matt Brown was going to be throwing back at him. But even when he fainted forward after he had hurt Matt Brown really bit on that feint and moved backwards even further. So he was clearly hurt, but we didn't see Diego Sanchez really show that killer instinct that we used to be used to him with. But Ben Saunders also hurt him to the body too, but wasn't able to really follow up and get that finish either. But Miguel Baeza, on the other hand, I believe that Baeza will see when Matt Brown is hurt. I think he's going to be planning on using those body kicks, leg kicks to set up the body kicks, to set up the head kick, whatever it is. I think he's just so calculated, plays it very safe too, so that he could actually go out there and finish a guy like Matt Brown. I fully expect him to go and finish a guy like Matt Brown. Matt Brown is good against guys that he's able to kind of rush and overwhelm with elbows and other ridiculous strikes and his pace and pressure. But when it comes down to guys that are not as technical, when it comes down to guys that are actually technical and use their calculated measuring movements to finish their opponents, Matt Brown has a lot of trouble with that. Donald Cerrone, that fight was a perfect example of, if you're able to establish your game early, keep Matt Brown on the outside, punish him whenever he tries to close the distance, it's going to be a long night for Matt Brown. And I think that Miguel Baeza is very, very capable of implying or applying that type of game plan here against Matt Brown. I like Baeza here. Minus 200, in my opinion, is not that bad of a line. Matt Brown, I feel like he's just back for a paycheck, and that's probably not the best way to go about these types of fights. Coming off, you're literally fighting old timers all the way up until you're finally coming in and fighting a young upstart who has a bright future, in my opinion. Damian Maia, Jake Ellenberger, Donald Cerrone, Diego Sanchez, Ben Saunders, 5, guys that are arguably past their prime, and you went 2-3 against all 5 of those guys. I think it's a big step up for Miguel Baeza in terms of name recognition and guys who legit deserve to be in the UFC. Miguel Baeza kind of had a gimme with that Hector Aldana fight, it seemed, but I think Matt Brown will bring out a little bit more in Baeza, but he's definitely going to need this in terms of a learning experience. He's going to need to be there, and a guy who's pretty much been fighting for a long fucking time and has a really good name. I'm sure Miguel Baeza, in one way or another, kind of looks up to Matt Brown in terms of his style. But I think that as long as he doesn't let the bright lights and the veteran that's staring across from him get to him, he should be very successful. I really like Miguel Baeza in this spot. I don't see in which way Brown could win this. Last thing I do want to touch on Brown is the fact that he does have a good jiu-jitsu game too. It's very overlooked due to the fact that he's always going out there and rushing guys and giving us those elbows that we've come to love from Matt Brown in very entertaining fights. But if he needs to get this fight to the ground, I think that's kind of where he could be successful at. But I don't think he's going to be successful at actually getting Baeza down. Baeza moves very well. His takedown defense, is decent. I think that he'll keep Matt Brown on the outside, completely pick him apart there. And then whenever Brown, leaves that body a little bit too open, we'll see Baeza catch that body, drop Matt Brown, and then eventually get a finish. It's crazy. I can't remember any fighter other maybe than Donald Cerrone, but I can't remember any other fighter that's been hurt that much to the body, and for some reason is just never able to get over that. I'm not sure. Like it's kind of similar to like a chin issue, but they kind of have like a tummy issue, if you want to call it that, or a liver issue, whatever the fuck it is. But either way, Matt Brown pretty much gets hurt every fight to the body, and I expect Miguel Baeza to be targeting that, or at least centering a game plan around, finding a way to open up the body of Matt Brown. So maybe it's, consistent leg kicks, thinking that the legs are always going to come low and then finally go to the body, or throw head kicks more often and, make Matt Brown think that you're actually going up there. Instead, you rip a body shot and then open up the rest of the game for yourself through that. But yeah, I love Baeza. Minus 200, not a bad line. Possible lock of the night play. Nothing confirmed yet, but I'm going to continue to go through this card and see where I'm at. But yeah, I like Baeza to win here by finish as well. So I'm going to say second round. Miguel Baeza by finish. Song Yadong versus Marlon Vera. This is a very intriguing fight due to the fact that both guys are still people that most fighters consider to be prospects. And I say that lightly with Marlon Vera due to the fact that he's been around in the UFC for a long time now, but he seems to be a fighter that a lot of people keep saying, okay, he has potential that he still has yet to fill. And though he's been on a bit of a winning streak right now, what is that? 5 straight wins that he's currently on. I still feel like he hasn't really fought somebody at that upper echelon level. And when he does, he comes out on the short end. Not saying that Douglas Silva de Andrade is a world beater or anything like that, but it's guys with specific styles that are able to break Marlon Vera, in my opinion. So the line earlier when I saw it was minus 200 for Song Yadong. Now it's minus 175. A little bit of action has come in on Marlon Vera. Now he's sitting at plus 155. Song Yadong minus 175. I may have gotten that wrong. Minus 200 earlier for Song Yadong. Now he's minus 175. Either way, I think I really like that spot. So let's get into the actual breakdown aspect of it. So with Marlon Vera, I feel like when you have a fighter that has the type of style that Song Yadong does, that really challenges Marlon Vera to get the rest of his game going, and it really demoralizes him. So the best example, there's 3 good examples you can find of Marlon Vera fighting a fighter that's somewhat similar to Song Yadong. We got John Lineker, Douglas Silva de Andrade, and Guido Canetti. These guys are somewhat stockier opponents. They vary in size a little bit, but they all pack a ton of power. Their main game plan is to go out there and try to knock your head off. Song Yadong a little bit more fancy than those other guys, throwing a little bit more spinning stuff. Douglas Silva de Andrade obviously does that as well too, but Yadong Song does it a little bit better in my opinion. And then the difference between the win that Marlon Vera got over Guido Canetti compared to Douglas Silva de Andrade and John Lineker was the fact that those other the 2 fighters that he lost to had the cardio to be able to keep up and keep that pace up. Silva de Andrade may not have the greatest cardio, but was able to actually still inflict that type of damage. Guido Canetti, on the other hand, he has like a round and a half of gas. After that, he allows his opponents to really take over. And the rear naked choke that Marlon Vera got over him in that fight was very impressive. But, I don't think Guido Canetti's the level of Song Yadong. And then obviously all those other opponents, Willie G. Biren, Frankie Saenz, Hernandez, Andre Ewell. I don't think Marlon Vera fears getting into a firefight with them, which is why we saw him a little bit more loose with the trigger with those guys. Apologies. But if you see him fight a guy like Yadong Song, I think he's going to respect the power of Yadong a little bit too much. Song really likes to come forward, throw a ton of heat, likes to throw spinning shit every now and then. But training at Team Alpha Male, I believe that he has wrestling in his back pocket too. But I don't think he's going to need to lean on it at all because his striking is just that good. He's 21 years old. And has had over 19 fights at this time. That's insane. I heard not a statistic, but a fact that he had lied about his age earlier in his career so that he could start getting fights. And this kid's weathered for it, man. He is ready for the big stage. He may not be ready for a title shot or anything like that, but I believe he can beat guys with the level of Marlon Vera. The Alejandro Perez knockout was beautiful, set that up beautiful with that right cross. Vince Morales was a good win for him as well. Felipe Arantes was his first legitimate win in the UFC. That was his second UFC fight as well. And then obviously the Cody Stamann fight probably should have came out on the losing end there. It didn't help that he had that illegal knee in the first round. That fight probably should have been scored for Cody Stamann, but it doesn't really matter because he came out with a draw. And that's not the type of style that Marlon Vera is going to be going for here. Cody Stamann, obviously a much better wrestler than Marlon Vera, so I believe that, I wouldn't read too much into the fact that Cody Stamann was able to get Yadong Song down in that third round. I don't think we'll see those types of takedowns from Marlon Vera. I like Yadong Song here, and you got to think that his submission defense is on point too. While working with Team Alpha Male as much as he has recently, he has been spending time with them, which is good. It's very helpful that he has submission specialists like the Team Alpha Male guys, especially with the guillotine chokes, kind of teaching him the ways around that. And I think that this is a perfectly matched fight for him, for Marlon Vera. I think there is. It's tough to call it recency bias when it's been 5 straight wins for Marlon Vera, but there's got to be a little bit. You gotta really look at the matchups directly and see, okay, these were all winnable matchups for him. But with this Song Yadong style, I don't know. I don't think he'll be able to really. I think he will be demoralized. I think he will will be broke as well too. I think Yadong Song will continuously keep moving forward, land big shots, walk through whatever Marlon Vera is going to bring towards him. And Marlon Vera is not like a huge one punch knockout power type of guy or a one kick knockout type of guy. He's not. He is just not that dude. But Yadong Song is. That beautiful elbow that he had against. Who the hell did he? Felipe Arantes. That was a beautiful elbow off the break of a clinch that he was able to land there. And with Marlon Vera, I don't think he has too much to worry about here. I think the biggest threat that Marlon Vera does pose is maybe off of his back or if this fight gets into the grappling realm, his jiu-jitsu is pretty good. I'll give him that. He's very crafty. He's very flexible as a fighter as well too. So he's able to get his legs up there really quickly. But I'm not sure if Yadong Song is actually even going to try to fuck around on the ground here. I think he's going to do his best to keep this fight on the feet. And even if it does get to the ground, I think he'll be able to play it safe enough to be able to stay out of the submission attempts of Marlon Vera. So I like Yadong Song here very, very much. Minus 175 is a very good price tag. Where I'm literally recording this 10 minutes before the next or the Wednesday UFC is about to start, and I'm pretty sure I might even pull a trigger on him tonight. Not 100% sure yet. I really like Miguel Baeza as well too. That's a fighter that I was looking at. Minus 200 is pretty good there. But yeah, Song Yadong is a great spot here. I might pick both of them as my lock of the night plays. I'm not 100% sure yet. I gotta figure that out. I don't want to be a little bit, I don't want to be too trigger happy with my lock of the night plays. Maybe put 3.5 units on both of them or 5 units on one of them. We'll have to figure that out and see. We'll see where the rest of the value lays for dogs throughout the card as well too, and see how we're able to go about this from a risk management standpoint. But yeah, I love Song Yadong. Love him. I like fading Marlon Vera. I did fade him against when he fought Frankie Saenz. That was a bad bet. You know what I mean? I really thought that Saenz was going to be able to grind him out. He couldn't even get close distance before Marlon Vera put him out. And I attribute that more to Frankie Saenz's age and obviously not being the best striker. And Marlon Vera is no knockout Francis Ngannou type guy, so I think Song Yadong will be fine, especially when he starts initiating these firefight exchanges, which is when he'll be able to dish out most of his damage and also break Marlon Vera in the meantime. But yeah, Song Yadong, I'm going to take him to win. Man, he could possibly even finish this fight too. But just to be on the safe side, I'm going to say Song Yadong by decision. Actually, you know what? I'm going to say Song Yadong by second round TKO. I think he just continuously puts it on Vera. Vera is quite durable, but I think that when he feels the power of Song Yadong, he's really going to crumble, and it's going to be tough. He did go to a decision against John Lineker and Douglas Silva de Andrade, but I feel like Song Yadong is just a slightly faster, slightly more technical, and a better cardio version of those two prior fighters. Man, I would have loved to see Song Yadong versus John Lineker at one point if John Lineker was still in the UFC, but I guess I'll just have to dream about that. But all right, I'll finish this breakdown with Song Yadong to win by second round TKO. Krzysztof Jotko versus Eryk Anders. This is a weird fight to cap. Technically, you got to go with Krzysztof Jotko in terms of being the better striker, the overall better fighter. But with Eryk Anders, you can't, neglect or look past his athleticism and his power. So let's start off with Krzysztof Jotko. We've seen a different fighter or a different type of fighter from Krzysztof Jotko since his loss to Brad Tavares. That was actually the second of 2 straight knockout losses in fights that he was arguably winning up until that point. The Brad Tavares one, obviously a little bit closer than the Uriah Hall one, but he still ended up finding himself knocked out in both fights. In the Alan Amedovski fights and the Marc-Andre Barriault fight, you'll obviously realize that he goes about it, his fights in a different approach. He uses his hands to set up his grappling, and then he closes the distance, try to latch onto you, pretty much clinch fuck you. In the Amedovski fight, it was more so a grapple fuck where he just ended up continuously getting him down, negating the power that Allen was throwing in return, reducing the chances of him actually getting knocked out. And obviously he did the same thing in the Marc-Andre Barriault fight, but he had a little bit harder of a time getting Barriault down. So it got a little bit dicey for him there, but he was still able to pull out the split decision victory. On the other hand, with Eryk Anders, I think he's going to have a harder time tying up Anders or even taking him down. I don't think he'll be able to take him down, but he's going to have to figure out a way of nullifying Anders' power, without being able to take him down. And I think it's going to come in the clinch position, and in the clinch position is also where he got knocked out by Brad Tavares with that beautiful uppercut. But he's got to be careful. Like it's hard for me to see him, for 15 minutes sticking on the outside and landing shots on Anders while still winning the fight without getting clipped and possibly getting hurt, rocked, and dropped. So I'm not totally understanding the minus 140 on Krzysztof Jotko here. With that said, I'm not, super enthralled with wanting to bet Eryk Anders here better than plus 120, plus 130. This fight is a pass for me. I could see both outcomes. I don't really believe in Anders' power to, if he hits like one shot, it's going to absolutely put him out. He doesn't have that Nico Price type of power, in my opinion. But, there is a good chance that he can land on the chin of Jotko. But then there's also a chance that he gets outpointed with Jotko continuing to stay on his bicycles, continuously moving, landing leg kicks here and there, then blitzing in with a 1-2 every now and then getting back out. He needs to be very, very efficient with his movement and his striking. Yeah, it's tough for me to pick a side either way here. With Anders, he's coming off that Gerald Meerschaert fight, which he kind of got hurt late in the fight. So we've seen, obviously, fighters that aren't primarily strikers kind of outstrike Eryk Anders as well, too. Not really outstrike, but like do damage. And I think Jotko could have some success there, too. But I'm very intrigued with what his approach is going to be in with this fight, considering the last 2 performances that he's had. It's tough. Like, it's either Eryk Anders' power or Krzysztof Jotko's, his point moving, his point fighting style, where he stays on the outside. It's hard for me to go up against a guy who has a tattoo of Vegeta on his arm, just being a big Dragon Ball Z fan from back in the day. But you really got to look at fighting styles and risk and reward of both guys in terms of what they need to do to implement their game and still come out with a victory. I think I'm going to have to I think I'm going to have to go with Anders. I find it hard that Jotko's going to be able to nullify him with the clinch for 15 minutes without eating some big shots from your boy. So I'm going to go with Anders by third round KO. Maybe it's a little bit of a clinic for Jotko leading up to that third round, but I could absolutely see a point in time where Anders lands that punch and puts Jotko out. But I'm not betting either side here. There's just not enough of an argument on either side. But I'm going to go with Anders here. Again, nullifying the clinch game, keeping this fight on the feet, being the stronger guy for sure. Might have a little bit of speed advantage for the beginning part of the fight. But yeah, technique-wise, his striking just isn't at the level of Jotko's, but his power is definitely way more than Jotko's. And all Anders is going to need is a couple good strikes that he can land throughout the fight, and then eventually wear on Jotko and put him out. But again, I even as a Hail Mary parlay piece, I'm overlooking both of these aspects here, and I don't know if it's going to go under 2.5 or over 2.5. But if it were to go under 2.5, it's probably Anders by KO. So I'm going to go with Anders by third round KO. But totally passing this fight. Dan Ige versus Edson Barboza. This is the third fight from the top. And in regards to odds, we're talking about minus 140 for Edson Barboza, plus 130 for Dan Ige. Let's start off with Dan Ige. In my opinion, since his Danny Henry fight, he's really turned a corner. And he's on a 5-fight winning streak, but what has really attributed to his streak, in my opinion, is his belief in his hands. We know he has a good jiu-jitsu game. That's kind of what he brings to the table right off the bat. But his confidence in his hands and his ability to throw with so much confidence and power has allowed him to open up the rest of his game and kind of allowed his opponents to start like backing down in a sense. The Danny Henry fight was pretty quick, where he hurt Danny Henry, quickly swarmed him, and then eventually got the rear naked choke. In regards to the Kevin Aguilar fight, that was a little bit of a closer fight. Kevin Aguilar had a little bit of success there, but for the most part, Danny Ige was really putting it on him from the get-go. He was a little bit faster than Kevin Aguilar. He had a little bit better control on the ground, and he was able to reverse and get out of bad positions if he ever found him in there. In the Mirsad Bektik fight, split decision lost her, and that was actually a fight where I believe I had lock of the night money on Mirsad Bektik, and yeah, that one was a little bit tough to watch. That's how you can tell that Bektik has really, turned a corner in terms of where he's really good at, and his potential is starting to really sink. And Dan Ige really put it on him in that fight. I was kind of surprised that Ige was able to get him down in that first round, but it seemed more so like a slip up on Bektik's part, which allowed Dan Ige to get that position. In this fight against Edson Barboza, the one style that we've always seen successful against Barboza is somebody that continuously pressures him, keeps him on his back foot, and doesn't allow him to really get set in terms of actually getting his shots off and his kicks going. I think Dan Ige can actually bring that type of style here against Edson Barboza. I think he's going to continuously be able to walk him down, throw power shots, as long as he doesn't get demoralized by any of the leg kicks that Edson Barboza ends up landing here and there. It should be issues for Barboza. I don't think that Ige will really get him down that easily. I think he'll have to work on Barboza a little bit on the feet, kind of tire him out, push him up against the cage, and really work his body to eventually get that takedown, probably in the second or third round. But yeah, it's really tough to see what kind of shape that we're actually going to get Edson Barboza in. This is the first time he's down to 145. He made 145.5 or 145 or 146, I believe it was. I can't remember, but he weighed in this morning. Didn't need the towel or anything like that, but he looked like he had like negative 2% body fat. It's insane. But somehow he made the weight. Good for him. Doing good work over there with the ATT guys. It's so hard to cap whether we're going to get a good Edson Barboza or whether we're going to get a completely shot Edson Barboza. The closest thing we have to a comparison or something that we can relate it to is when Jose Aldo just recently fought Marlon Moraes in his first fight down at 135 pounds. He looked great. He looked a lot better than a lot of people gave him credit for. And even in that third round, he was still able to really walk down Marlon Moraes. Even though he didn't land the best shots, and in my opinion, Moraes won that third round, I was still impressed with the fact that he was able to go, a solid 15 minutes without really showing too much issues for gassing. Edson Barboza, on the other hand, we've seen him kind of gas later in fights, previously. So this might even be a little bit worse of a case for him to be at 145, draining himself even more. Who knows how much he's going to be able to replenish. Yeah, it's tough. Like going down to 145 for the first time during something like this as well, where his training may have been affected in a certain way. There's too many question marks. The only way that I would lean here, honestly, is Dan Ige. I never thought I would actually say that, especially against a guy like Barboza, but there's just too many unknowns. Personally, I'm going to pass on this fight. The plus 130 on Ige is a little bit, it's intriguing, that's for sure. The prop for him inside the distance may be even better one. I think I saw one of my buddies over there play Ige by KO or a TKO at plus 550. I think that's a little bit of value if that's something you're looking at. We can definitely see Ige go out there and probably get a later finish, continuously staying on Edson Barboza, and albeit him staying away from the leg kicks and still keeping his confidence up, he has a damn good shot of winning this fight. I'm not completely counting Edson Barboza out, which is why I'm actually going to be passing on this fight. But I do think that Ige has the recipe to actually pressure and potentially break Edson Barboza later in the fight if Barboza is really not able to truly recover from that weight cut. The Barboza's signature win as of late has to be his Dan Hooker fight, where he pretty much battered him for a solid 12 minutes before finally hitting him with a body shot and dropping him with that. But the Gaethje loss was a really tough one for him. That was one of those fights where, the pace and pressure really caught up to Barboza early in that fight. It only took 2.5 minutes. But Gaethje was just on the gas pedal the entire time. The Paul Felder loss was a little bit interesting. Barboza, it was close. It was a split decision loss. Felder landed some good shots. The one mistake Barboza probably made in that fight, which, on the outside seems like a bit of an advantage, was the takedown that he got on Paul Felder, and then Paul Felder just rips his face up from the bottom. So that didn't really help his case. I don't think we're going to see Barboza try to take Ige down here. I don't think that we're going to see Ige be successful with the takedowns initially, but a little bit, maybe over a round and a half, we'll see him get a little bit more successful with that, continuously pushing and pressing Edson Barboza. Ige seems to be a pretty intelligent guy, a pretty smart guy. He's a manager as well, too. He works for Dominance MMA under Ali Abdelaziz. He seems to, again, his fight IQ seems a little bit there. So just studying Edson Barboza, you got to think that, putting your foot on the gas, staying in front of our Barboza's face, either being completely in or completely out. Don't just stand out there and wait for Barboza to really get in his game. Whenever Barboza throws something at you, you throw back, you counter. You always be first. That's the way that Dan Ige wins. If he's first, sticks that jab in Barboza's face, stays on him, he should definitely win this fight. And he should technically have a cardio advantage here due to the fact that he's not, making his 145 debut, nor does he look like he has negative 2% body fat. So I like Dan Ige here. I'm going to say by third round stoppage, probably TKO or a submission, but I'm not confident enough to actually bet it. But I do like Dan Ige here until we see Barboza truly at this weight class, and this is going to be his first test, and this is a legitimate test. Ige is no slouch either, right? So if Barboza goes out there and I think best case scenario for Edson Barboza here is to go out there and get a 15-minute dominant decision victory, showcasing that he can keep his cardio up, keep his punches coming, keep his kicks coming, keep the pace up. That should definitely help him, allow people to be more sold on Edson Barboza at 145 pounds. But yeah, too many question marks. I don't see the reason to waste money on this fight, but I'm going to take Dan Ige by third round TKO. Claudia Gadelha versus Angela Hill. This is the co-main event of the evening. Minus 200 roughly for Claudia Gadelha, plus 185 for Angela Hill. So I think there's a lot of recency bias going into this fight, hence why the line is as close as it is. Probably should be closer to minus 300, minus 350 for Claudia Gadelha. And I think a lot of it has to do with two things. The over-exaggeration in terms of Claudia Gadelha's poor gas tank. I think that's being a little bit blown out of proportion here. And then secondly, the recent run that Angela Hill's been on, completely dummying and handling girls that should technically be 105ers compared to 115ers. So let's start off with Claudia Gadelha first and foremost. She's coming off a win over Randa Marcos in a fight that was, kind of closely contested because they were just staring at each other for pretty much the whole fight. I'm not sure what it was in terms of Gadelha wanting to go about it that way, but she still came out on the winning end. So big ups to her in that. In the Nina Ansaroff fight, she was able to get Ansaroff down in that first round, and then in the second round, she seemed to have a little bit more difficulty getting her down. She did get her down at the end of the second round, but Ansaroff had done already too much damage on the feet to really, warrant a victory for Claudia Gadelha. In the Karolina Kovacevic fight, that's a fight where, somewhat similar with Angela Hill in terms of the person being primarily a striker. She was able to get Karolina down relatively quickly and then get the rear naked choke to get the victory there. The Jessica Andrade fight is a little bit harder to, relate to Angela Hill just because we know that, Andrade is kind of like a John Lineker style of fighter, whereas Angela Hill is more so a pick and pop and move as much as possible, keep the activity and the pace up as much as possible. My one, so it's pretty obvious. Claudia Gadelha's path to victory here is more than likely to get this fight to the ground. She has a very significant advantage when it comes to submissions and just the grappling game. Angela Hill has made a little bit of improvements in that area. However, I don't think it's at the level of Claudia Gadelha. With Gadelha, like I'm talking about in terms of the blown out of proportion gas tank, in the Nina Ansaroff fight, Ansaroff just did a really good job of keeping Gadelha off of her. I don't know if Hill will be as successful. Ansaroff is a little bit stronger than Angela Hill. She has slightly better grappling as well too. With Angela Hill, she's a little bit easier to take down. The takedown that Randa Marcos got on her was like an inside trip, beautiful little move there, but I still have seen her getting taken down from head and arm throws, and that's probably the most like generic and stereotypical takedown out there, at least for women's MMA. Yet she's still falling victim to that. When Angela Hill is coming in and letting her shots off and throwing her kicks every now and then, she's still leaving herself exposed to getting taken down. And if she's not minding her P's and Q's and like staying on the outside and just getting in and getting out, she's going to get taken down. And I don't see an instance where, she doesn't get taken down in the first round or the second round. And, even if Claudia Gadelha is not able to generate some sort of finish in those first two rounds, I don't think that Angela Hill's power is anything crazy where it's going to overwhelm Claudia Gadelha and she's going to get a finish in the third round. Like I said, the recency bias regarding Angela Hill is based off of her beating women at 105 pounds. And yeah, I know I had a little bit of dog money on Loma Lukbunmi last time around, but I thought she would be able to perform a little bit better than that. And Angela Hill showed that she was a stronger fighter in there, strictly due with strength too. She was able to get Loma down a couple times, control her in that fight. And same with the Hannah Cyphers fight, she was able to get her down and then eventually got a ground and pound finish in that fight. The Ariane Carnelosi fight, that was mainly a stand-up fight where Carnelosi was just looking for that bomb, was not able to get it. And then the Xiao Nan Yan fight is, Angela Hill pretty much got outgunned there. Yeah, I truly believe that Gadelha is going to be able to get this fight to the ground. I think she'll be able to handle Angela Hill there, and I don't think she has to worry about any type of a finish in that third round either. So, man, minus 205 personally is what I bet on. I put 2.75 units on Claudia Gadelha at that minus 205 price, and I think it's way more value than possible. I'm hesitant. I'm slightly hesitant in making her a full lock of the night play strictly due to Angela Hill, if she is somehow able to stay out of the grasp of Claudia Gadelha and then just somehow, outpoint her the last two rounds, that's my only concern. But I don't see that. Claudia, everybody's making it seem like Claudia Gadelha has the worst gas tank out there. I don't believe that. She was still kind of in that Nina Ansaroff fight in that third round. And then she was doing decent in the third round of the Randa Marcos fight. Again, a fight that did not have any, not as much activity, so it didn't really drain her gas tank or anything like that. But I think that, it's it's just blown way out of proportion in terms of how gassed Claudia Gadelha really gets later on in the fight. So I think she'll have relative ease in terms of getting Angela Hill down there, and then she's really going to show off her strength there too, and she'll be able to handle Angela Hill on the ground. I think she'll either get like an arm triangle choke or a rear naked choke of some sort, but I truly see her getting the submission. I see a lot of people out there wanting to play the decision prop for Claudia Gadelha. I would rather just stick to the straight. Like, yeah, I'm not 100% sure that she'll just grind out Angela Hill. Like, obviously that's the way I see her beating her, but she could absolutely get the submission too. Angela Hill's submission defense isn't the greatest. Like, it's decent. She's starting to throw up submissions of her own off of her back too, but again, it's not to the level of Claudia Gadelha. There's a reason Claudia Gadelha is one of the top women in the world. Angela Hill is just on a nice little 3-fight winning streak. This is where it stops. This is where she starts finding the top of the top, and Claudia Gadelha is just not going to let this one slip away from her. I love Claudia Gadelha in this spot, especially around that minus 205 range. I said I'd bet. I said she has value up to minus 300, minus 400. If you can't get better than minus like 220, minus 230, I would just stay away from it. But the minus 205, that's way too enticing for me to pass up. So I'm going 2.75 units on Claudia Gadelha to win this fight. I'm going to call it first round submission. But there is an opportunity that she can grind it out for 3 rounds as well too. But don't buy into the Angela Hill hype. If she comes out of this fight victorious, then maybe you buy the Angela Hill hype. But she's not going to go out there and finish Claudia Gadelha. That's just my 2 cents. So once again, I got Claudia Gadelha to win by first round submission. And then lastly, I went into this fight wanting to bet Angela Hill, especially when her price got above like plus 180, plus 200. I'm like, there's got to be value on Angela Hill here, right? But after watching the tape, there's not, she hasn't fought anybody to the level of the grappling of Claudia Gadelha in a while. Randa Marcos was the last one that you could really say, and I would say Claudia Gadelha is a better wrestler and has better top control than her too. So I'm siding with Claudia Gadelha here. She's definitely worth the minus 200, minus 220-ish, if that's the highest you can get her at, or the best you can get her at. I would definitely pull that. But yeah, Claudia Gadelha by first round submission. All right, let's move on right into the main event. We got Alistair Overeem versus Walt Harris. As we all know, the main storyline going into this fight is Walt Harris's, the unfortunate tragedy that he had to deal with on October 23rd. The only reason I remember the exact date is due to the fact that it was like a day after my birthday that it had actually happened. But that's the day that they, I believe, they filed a missing persons report. And then a couple of days later, we find out that, Anaya Blanchard was murdered, whatever the fuck it was, kidnapped. Horrible shit that he had to go through. It was his stepdaughter, to be exact, but very horrible stuff that Walt Harris had to go through. But a lot of people are taking, in my opinion, like there's got to be a little bit that you can take from it in terms of the motivation that Walt Harris has to really go out there and fight. But the MMA gods don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? He is the favorite, and I completely understand that. And the only reason there's a plus money sign beside Alistair Overeem's name is the fact that his chin may or may not be able to handle the power of Walt Harris. Walt Harris's last 2 fights, we've seen him go out there and absolutely demolish his opponents in Alexei Oleinik and Sergey Spivak. But Alistair Overeem is another type of striker. Again, the only asterisk that's there for Alistair Overeem is his chin. And if his chin, even stays around a little bit and he's able to eat the power shots for Walt Harris off the bat, he should be able to take over this fight in a relatively easy manner. It wasn't too long ago where, Walt Harris was still seen as a guy that wasn't really going to make it in the UFC. He was minus 225 against Daniel Spitz. He was minus 225 against Andrei Arlovski, which he ended up winning, minus 170 against Sergey Spivak, and then minus 175 for Alexei Oleinik. So if you're telling me that he's only minus 135 to Alistair Overeem, that's a little bit crazy to me. We did see him go 3 rounds against Andrei Arlovski in a fight where it seemed like he really shut down Arlovski's game with a lot of feints. Arlovski didn't want to get hit by anything. Walt Harris landed enough shots here and there, but the majority of that fight was Andrei Arlovski kind of just moving backwards and scared of the feints that Walt Harris was really throwing at him. I think Overeem, once he starts to get the timing down and all that, he'll be able to initiate the clinch position, and that's where he's going to start raining off his knees, which are still very deadly even after 60 fights or whatever he's had up to this point. That's still a very, very strong point of his game. It just comes down to his chin. If he can weather that initial storm from Walt Harris, this fight should be in the bag for him. And personally, This is the only reason I'm not betting on him, because I did bet on Alistair Overeem, or I bet on the under 1.5 in the Overeem and Rosenstrike fight, strictly due to the fact that I'm like, okay, if Overeem gets him down, he's probably going to submit him, because everything that we've seen in the past for Rosenstrike is that he's pretty much a fish out of water once it hits the ground. And Alistair Overeem, mainly known as a kickboxer, has plenty of submission victories on his record too. He's very well versed in the jiu-jitsu world, but he wasn't able to pull off the submission victory over Rosenstrike. That's what makes me a little bit hesitant here in terms of thinking that he's going to be able to get Walt Harris down and pull off a submission. Harris, still very strong, should have a decent shot of getting back to his feet if Rosenstrike was able to as well. But I think it's all close quarters. That's the path to victory for Alistair Overeem here. He needs to get in tight. He needs to land his knees. Takedowns would be very helpful. We saw him really work on that takedown game, especially when he, right after he lost to Curtis Blades, he went to go over and train with Curtis Blades in Denver. And then the next fight was Sergey Pavlovich, and landed he got Pavlovich down and then finished him from full guard. Managed to generate immense amount of power from the guard alone just to put Sergey Pavlovich out. So that's something that we can't really overlook. I'm not sold on Walt Harris's game off of his back. The guy really has no jiu-jitsu, but we haven't really seen too much of it other than when he got submitted by Fabricio Verdum. I like Alistair Overeem here. Like justice would prevail here if Walt Harris had actually come out and finished Alistair Overeem, and he can dedicate this victory to his late stepdaughter. But it's if Overeem goes into this fight knowing that, I don't know if the UFC would cut him. This would be how many straight losses for him now? Let me confirm that. I know he lost to Rosenstrike last time out. That's one. So that'll be 1 out of 3 fights that he's lost. He's obviously beaten Sergey Pavlovich and Alexei Olenek before that. But yeah, it's tough for me to be like, okay, Walt Harris is for sure going to go out there and starch Overeem. I don't want to pick either side here. I don't want to bet the over-under. The motivation that Walt Harris has coming into this fight, it's hard to cap that. Like, sometimes it might fuck with people too much. Some people might just, it might give them too much adrenaline, and they just go out there and they try to go for a finish and they don't get a finish, and then Overeem's going to be able to take over and, land consistent body shots, do body work, really suck the energy out of Walt Harris. Again, if it wasn't for the chin of Alistair Overeem, this fight would be capped significantly differently. Like, Overeem would probably be a -250, -300 favorite if it wasn't for his chin issues. And that's hard to cap. We don't know. Sometimes it's going to be there. Sometimes it's not. And Walt Harris, big, he's fast, he's athletic. He could definitely land on the chin of Alistair Overeem. But Overeem, he needs to do a good job of avoiding the big shots. He was able to avoid the big shots of Rosenstrike for, damn near 5 rounds before finally get clipped at the last couple of seconds. And in my opinion, another ref may have let that fight go on slightly longer, which would have allowed Overeem to survive those 4 seconds to actually get the victory here. And if you guys really remember that, when Rosenstrike landed that punch, he kind of just walked off and kind of forced the referee to stop that fight. Obviously it doesn't look good that Overeem got clipped and his lip was hanging off his face, but it's pretty evident that Overeem was, on his way to getting back up, and he was on pretty much back up as soon as the referee stopped the fight. But you got to give the guy another 4 seconds. He just worked 25 minutes to get a victory here. Definitely would have won it on the judges' scorecards, in my opinion. But Rosenstrike ends up getting the late finish there. So, again, I'm going to pick Alistair Overeem to win this fight, probably by 2nd or 3rd round submission. But I have no confidence in placing the money on Overeem. It's burned me in the past. But I have, with Walt Harris, you can't really want to bet a guy. Like, if he goes in there and tries to pull the Andrei Arlovsky game plan, it's not going to work. Alistair Overeem is a much better striker than Andrei Arlovsky. Again, if his chin holds up, he should be able to outpoint Walt Harris in a striking battle, win the fight in the clinch, win the fight on the ground if he's able to get it there. But it all depends on his chin, and I'm not about to stake money on Alistair Overeem's chin holding up or not. So I'm picking Alistair Overeem by 2nd round submission. Dog or pass, or if you want to hopefully vote for the right thing to happen in the world. You're going to bet on Walt Harris here, but I'm going to pass on it myself, as I said. So Overeem by second round sub, and that is UFC on ESPN 8. I apologize for the late drop on this podcast. Been a crazy week. 3 events in 8 days. Insane amount of studying that I got done in this last week. But thankfully, well, not thankfully, I want an event on May 23rd as well too, but they pushed it back to May 30th, it seems. So I'm going to try to start cranking out the breakdowns for the May 30th card in the next couple days. If you're a Patreon member, you already know that you get those breakdowns as soon as I finish recording them. So if you want, I'll probably do Woodley versus Burns first. I know it's not 100% confirmed yet, but that seems to be the fight that they're trying to headline for the May 30th card. But I'll probably drop that early in the week coming up, and then slowly start getting content out so that you guys can get your hands on these breakdowns. And then I won't drop the next MMA Lock-Cast until Monday of fight week of May 30th. So whatever that is, May 25th, whatever the Monday is before that. So yeah, if you want to get the content nice and early, hit up the Patreon. The links in the description below. And what else do I got? Make sure you guys check out the tape index. That's definitely been a big help for me as well. If you like to do your own due diligence in terms of polishing up on a couple of tape, studying things, and want to see things for yourself, the tape index is there to help make things a lot easier. We have everything that you need to help bet on MMA on one page. All the fight links, all the Tapology links, Instagram links, UFC stats links, everything's on one page. So you literally just bookmark that page, click on the page, and then everything that you need is all right there. Very, very helpful and very, very efficient for your time too. So make sure you guys check that out. All right. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you guys hit the subscribe button on YouTube, rate and review on iTunes, because that's slowly starting to blow up a little bit too. And that definitely helps me moving forward as well. So if you guys haven't done that, please do so. I would very, very much appreciate that. And lastly, MMALOTN.ca, everything for the website is on there. I use the website, I use Patreon and Twitter. Those are my three. That's the trifecta that I got in terms of, connecting with you guys as best as possible. So hit me up on Twitter at MMALOTN. If you have any questions or anything like that, I'd be happy to help you out. Or if you want to talk some shit, go ahead and talk some shit. I don't block people. I don't mute people either. So go ahead and chirp away. I don't really give a fuck. It's all positivity over here. All right. Good luck on the fights. We'll see you guys for the next episode of the Lock-Cast on the week of the 30th, whatever the fuck that is. And good luck on your bets.